In a quiet residential neighborhood on the outskirts of Denver, Colorado, Rebecca Miller lived alone with her 8-year-old daughter Emily. Her life had changed dramatically since losing her husband David in a car accident 2 years ago. For her, working at a marketing company, each day was busy yet fulfilling, but there were moments when she acutely felt her husband's absence. As Rebecca hurried through her morning routine, Emily sat beside her, innocently spilling cereal while eating breakfast. Watching her daughter smile as she braided her chestnut-colored hair, Rebecca couldn't help but see traces of David. The large eyes and friendly personality inherited from her father were Rebecca's most precious treasures. "Mommy, let's go hiking again this Saturday," Emily said with milk on her lips. "Of course, sweetheart. Where would you like to go?" Rebecca replied, wiping her daughter's mouth. Weekend hiking had become a mother-daughter tradition since losing her husband. Keeping David's words close to her heart, time spent in nature is the greatest gift. Rebecca treasured her time with her daughter. The foothills of the Rocky Mountains offered countless trails, and the two explored a different location each week. At work, there had been recent talk of a promotion. Moving up to marketing department manager would provide significant financial and emotional support. However, she also felt anxious about the increased responsibilities. The worry that it might reduce her time with Emily never left her mind. "Rebecca, good work today," her colleague Sarah called out as Rebecca was organizing papers at the office. She was Rebecca's trusted confidant at work. "How are you feeling about the promotion?" Sarah asked, settling into a chair. "I'm still undecided. When I think about Emily," Rebecca answered honestly. "You'll be fine. David would surely be cheering you on." David's brother Mark was the only family member who occasionally visited them. As a freelance programmer, he was more like an older brother figure to Emily than an uncle. For Rebecca, he was a precious person who carried traces of her husband. "When is Uncle Mark coming?" Emily asked while doing her homework. "Next Sunday. He'll probably play games with you again," Rebecca replied with a smile. Though Mark had an introverted personality, he came alive around Emily. With his programming background, he was knowledgeable about the latest games and technology, and Emily adored him. Rebecca also found it reassuring to get advice from a male perspective while raising her child alone. While preparing dinner, Rebecca gazed at the sunset spreading beyond the window. The suburban Denver neighborhood was quiet and ideal for raising a child. The neighbors were kind too, especially Mrs. Johnson across the street, who doted on Emily like her own granddaughter. "Mommy, my teacher praised me at school today," Emily reported proudly. "What did she praise you for?" Rebecca stopped what she was doing and turned toward her daughter. "My math test." "That's wonderful. Daddy would be so happy too," Rebecca hugged her daughter. How delighted David would have been if he were alive. He had been passionate about his daughter's education and always said he would support Emily no matter what she wanted to become. Rebecca wanted to carry on her husband's wishes and help her daughter reach her full potential. At night, after putting Emily to bed, Rebecca sat alone drinking coffee and thinking about the promotion opportunity, her daughter's future, and her own life. Since the tragedy 2 years ago, she had learned to cherish each day. In early March, spring was still far off in Colorado, and the morning air was piercingly cold against her cheeks. Rebecca was making coffee in the kitchen while watching Emily tie the laces of her new hiking shoes. The shoes were a birthday present from Mark last month. With their bright pink and purple colors, Emily had loved them at first sight. "When I wear these, I can walk even faster," Emily said proudly, lifting her foot. "Yes, they're very nice," Rebecca replied with a smile. Indeed, since getting the new shoes, Emily had become more active during hikes. She could walk longer distances than before and showed no signs of fatigue even on steep slopes. At work, the promotion discussion was becoming more concrete. The marketing department manager position meant a $20,000 salary increase. Considering Emily's future education costs, she couldn't afford to miss this opportunity. "Rebecca, how are the clients responding?" her boss Tom asked in the conference room. "Very positively. Especially regarding the new social media strategy, we've seen a 30% improvement in engagement rates," Rebecca reported, showing the materials. Though she was gaining recognition from colleagues and growing confidence in her work, Emily was always on her mind. If she had to work late more often, it would cut into time with her daughter. She sometimes thought that if David were alive, she could share these worries with him. Weekend hiking was precious time that healed the fatigue of weekdays. This Saturday, at Emily's request, they planned to visit the Flatirons near Boulder. The Rocky Mountain scenery was spectacular and one of their favorite spots. However, lately Rebecca had been troubled by a strange sensation. The feeling of being watched, of being followed. At first she thought it was her imagination, but the feeling grew stronger each day. When getting into her car in the office parking lot, she noticed seeing the same dark gray sedan repeatedly. She could see a figure in the driver's seat, but couldn't make out the face clearly. She seemed to see similar cars at the supermarket and library too. "You're overthinking it," Rebecca told herself. There are lots of similar cars in Denver. Emily's progress at school was going well. Her grades were consistently at the top of the class, and she had many friends. Her teacher, Mrs. Anderson, praised her, saying, "Emily is thoughtful and shows leadership qualities." "Mommy, I got the lead role in the school play," Emily announced, pulling a letter from her bag. "Really? What kind of role?" Rebecca took the letter from her daughter. "The Forest Fairy Queen." "I get to sing too," Emily's eyes sparkled. The school play was scheduled for late April and was also a day for parent observation. Rebecca decided to adjust her work schedule to definitely attend her daughter's big moment. How delighted David would have been. Mark's visits occurred about twice a month. He always brought small gifts for Emily. Programming learning games, the latest science magazines, and sometimes even homemade cookies. "Uncle is good at cooking too," Rebecca said admiringly. "My brother taught me." David was surprisingly good at cooking, Mark smiled nostalgically. When Mark was around, Emily was more excited than usual. Missing a father figure, she seemed to particularly enjoy attention from older men. For Rebecca too, Mark was a precious person with whom she could share memories of her husband. One night, on her way home from work, Rebecca noticed a car clearly following her. When she stopped at a traffic light and checked her rearview mirror, she saw a dark gray sedan 3 cars behind. When she turned the next corner, that car turned in the same direction. Rebecca felt her heart racing. Even after arriving home, the anxiety didn't fade. While Emily was taking a bath, Rebecca slightly opened the window curtains to check outside. Under the streetlight, she could see an unfamiliar car parked. "It's okay, you're overthinking it," she told herself again. The next morning, that car had disappeared. However, Rebecca's anxiety couldn't be completely dispelled. When taking Emily to school, she began paying attention to her surroundings. She didn't want to worry her daughter, but she also felt that it would be too late if something happened. She considered consulting with her colleague Sarah, but worried about being thought paranoid without any evidence. It didn't seem serious enough to contact the police. In the end, Rebecca decided to bear this anxiety alone. At work, new projects kept coming in, and expectations for her promotion were rising. Client evaluations were excellent, and team morale was high. However, her private anxieties grew larger each day. Only weekend hiking was time that let her forget such worries. In the mountains, cell phone signals were weak, and she felt completely liberated from urban noise. Walking mountain trails hand in hand with Emily was when Rebecca could truly relax. "Mommy, there's a squirrel over there," Emily pointed to where a small squirrel was running up a tree trunk. "You're right." How cute, Rebecca was comforted by her daughter's pure joy. Thanks to the new hiking shoes, Emily's steps had definitely become lighter. Even on steep uphill climbs, she didn't get out of breath, and Rebecca found herself getting tired first. The shoes Mark had chosen were truly a wonderful gift. On the second Saturday in April, the morning air was refreshing, and Colorado's sky was cloudlessly blue. Rebecca got up early to prepare Emily's breakfast and packed water bottles and sandwiches in their hiking backpacks. Today was their anticipated trip to Golden Gate Canyon State Park at the foot of the Rocky Mountains. "Mommy, I'm ready," Emily came running down the stairs. She was wearing her favorite pink and purple hiking shoes and carrying a small backpack. Her 8-year-old face shone with anticipation for adventure. "All right, let's go." Rebecca took her daughter's hand and opened the front door. The car drive took about an hour. Emily sat in the passenger seat, chatting happily while gazing at the scenery outside the window. She talked about animals she'd learned about at school, plans with friends, and next week's play rehearsal. The topics were endless. "Oh, there are horses over there," Emily pointed to a ranch. "You're right. What peaceful, lovely scenery," Rebecca replied with a smile. During time spent with her daughter like this, she could forget the anxiety she'd been feeling lately. The sensation of being watched was probably just paranoia from work stress. Today she was determined to enjoy nature leisurely with her daughter. When they arrived at the state park parking lot, several cars were already there. They could see families, couples, and hikers with dogs heading toward their respective destinations. Rebecca and Emily chose the intermediate-level Bluebird Trail. It was a moderate course of about 5 miles round trip, taking approximately 3 hours. At the trail entrance, Rebecca checked that her daughter's shoelaces were properly tied. The hiking shoes Mark had given her fit Emily's feet perfectly and looked comfortable to walk in. "I wonder how far we can walk today," Emily said with an expectant voice. "I'm sure we can make it to the summit. But don't overdo it. Tell me without hesitation if you get tired," Rebecca replied, patting her daughter's head. Soon after starting to walk, they were captivated by nature's beauty. Aspen trees beginning to bud lined both sides of the trail, with wild flowers peeking out here and there. Bird songs echoed through the forest, and squirrels and wild rabbits darted through the grass. "Mommy, what's the name of that flower?" Emily pointed to small purple flowers. "Probably wild iris. They bloom in spring," Rebecca stopped to explain. Emily observed the flowers with interest, saying she wanted to look them up in a field guide later. David had also loved nature observation and had carefully nurtured his daughter's curiosity. Rebecca continued his teachings, always supporting her daughter's desire to learn. After walking for about an hour, they reached the first rest point. Sitting on a large rock, they drank from their water bottles and had simple snacks. In the distance, snow-capped mountains were visible, and Emily was moved by the magnificent scenery. "Let's take a picture, Mommy," Emily urged her to take out her phone. They sat on the rock and took a selfie. Emily's smile was pure, and Rebecca was able to smile genuinely for the first time in a while. She wanted to treasure this moment. When they resumed walking the trail, the path gradually became steeper. However, thanks to her new shoes, Emily walked lightly. Slopes that would have made her complain of fatigue before, she now cleared easily. "These shoes are really good. We should thank Uncle Mark," Rebecca said, and Emily nodded happily. After walking for about 2.5 hours, they arrived at a scenic point with a small waterfall. The sound of water was pleasant, and negative ions felt good on their skin. Emily took pictures of the waterfall while Rebecca watched her daughter's innocent figure. "Just a little more to the summit. Can you make it?" Rebecca asked. "Of course. I'm not tired at all," Emily answered energetically. After climbing the final steep slope, a breathtaking view welcomed them. A magnificent panorama of the Rocky Mountains spread below, and Denver's cityscape was visible in the distance. Emily was speechless with emotion, and Rebecca was also captivated by nature's beauty. While eating their sandwich lunch at the summit, mother and daughter spent leisurely time together. Other hikers were similarly enjoying the scenery, making for a peaceful, calm afternoon. About 30 minutes after starting their descent, Emily's steps suddenly became heavy. Her daughter, who had been walking lightly until then, began stopping occasionally. "Are you okay? Are you tired?" Rebecca asked worriedly. "I might be a little tired," Emily answered quietly. Rebecca was carefully observing her daughter's condition. Her complexion wasn't bad, but her way of walking was different from usual. However, fatigue was natural after a long hike. About 15 minutes later, Emily suddenly stopped and grimaced. "Mommy," her daughter's voice clearly contained pain. "What's wrong?" Rebecca immediately rushed to her daughter's side. "My foot hurts," tears welled up in Emily's eyes. "My shoe is really hot. It feels like it's burning." Rebecca's heart began pounding violently. From her daughter's expression, she immediately knew this wasn't simple fatigue. "Which foot?" Rebecca tried to remain calm. "My right foot. It's hot and painful inside the shoe," Emily began crying. Rebecca had her daughter sit on a nearby large rock and quickly untied the laces of her right hiking shoe. When she tried to remove the shoe, Emily pulled her foot back in pain. "It's okay, Mommy's here. Just bear with it a little," Rebecca gently coaxed while carefully removing the shoe. She could see slight red marks on the sock around the ankle area. With trembling hands, Rebecca peered inside her daughter's shoe. She could see the insole slightly curled up at the edge. When she lifted it with her fingertip, there was something like a small metal piece underneath. It was clearly abnormally hot. The metal surface was discolored from heat and looked hot enough to cause burns if touched. This was no accident. Someone had intentionally planted it. "This can't be happening," Rebecca unconsciously murmured. Looking at her daughter's foot, she could see she had suffered minor burns. The skin was red and small blisters were beginning to form. Emily continued crying from the pain. Without hesitation, Rebecca took out her cell phone and dialed 911. The signal was weak in the mountains, but she managed to get through. "This is an emergency. My 8-year-old daughter has suffered burns. We're at Golden Gate Canyon State Park on the Bluebird Trail, about 1 mile down from the summit." "Understood. We're sending an ambulance." "How is your child's condition?" the operator's voice came through. "She's conscious, but has burns on her right foot. Some abnormally hot metal piece was planted in her hiking shoe. Police are coming too. Please wait there." Rebecca hung up and hugged Emily. Her daughter was trembling in her mother's arms. "It's okay, it's going to be okay now. The ambulance will be here soon," Rebecca comforted her daughter while anger and fear swirled in her heart. 30 minutes later, paramedics and police officers came running up the trail. Emily was transported to the hospital by ambulance, and Rebecca explained the situation to the police officer. The hiking shoes were confiscated as evidence for detailed examination. After Emily received treatment for her burns at the hospital, Rebecca spent the night sleepless at her daughter's bedside. Fortunately, the burns were minor and with proper treatment would heal completely in about a week. However, Rebecca's heart was filled with anger and fear. The person who had intentionally tried to hurt her beloved daughter was still at large. Early the next morning, Detective Johnson visited the hospital. He was a veteran who had handled various cases over many years, and his experienced eyes held deep insight. "Mrs. Miller, how is your daughter doing?" Detective Johnson asked gently. "Thankfully, the doctor says she's recovering well," Rebecca replied, looking tired. "That's good to hear. Now, about yesterday's incident, we have the shoe examination results," the detective continued, settling into a chair. "That metal piece was a high-performance GPS tracking chip. It's not supposed to generate heat, but it appears the circuit short-circuited for some reason, causing abnormal heating. Rebecca gasped. A tracking chip? You mean someone was monitoring Emily's whereabouts? Exactly. Moreover, this chip isn't a commercial product. It's a special one used by military or government agencies. It's not something ordinary people can easily obtain. Detective Johnson continued his explanation while opening his notebook. We're working to identify the purchaser from this chip's serial number. We're also investigating the suspicious incidents you mentioned recently. Rebecca spoke in detail about the stares she'd been feeling and the unfamiliar cars. The detective listened seriously, carefully recording each piece of information. We're also checking security camera footage from around your workplace and home. We might find some clues, Detective Johnson said, standing up. In any case, your and your daughter's safety is the top priority. I recommend placing you under police protection for a while. That afternoon, Emily was able to be discharged from the hospital. However, Rebecca felt anxious about returning home. With the perpetrator still uncaught, ensuring her daughter's safety was most important. On police recommendation, Rebecca and Emily temporarily stayed at a downtown hotel. It was also decided that plainclothes officers would provide round-the-clock security. In the hotel room, Rebecca explained the incident to Emily in age-appropriate language. Though the content was difficult for an 8-year-old to understand, she conveyed that they needed to act carefully for a while. Mommy, is there someone targeting us? Emily asked anxiously. The police will definitely catch the criminal, so don't worry. Mommy will protect you, Rebecca replied, hugging her daughter. 3 days later, Detective Johnson contacted them. Important clues had been found in the security camera footage analysis. Rebecca left her daughter at the hotel and headed to the police station. Please look at this footage, the detective pointed to the monitor. The screen showed Rebecca's workplace parking lot. The time was around 6 p.m. on a weekday last month. Rebecca could be seen walking toward her car, followed by a man walking behind her. The man wore a hat pulled low, his face unclear, but his build and way of walking seemed familiar. This man appears to have been researching your behavior patterns for the past 2 months, the detective explained. The same person has been spotted multiple times around your workplace, home, and Emily's school. Another video was played. This time it was a supermarket parking lot. Footage of Rebecca and Emily finishing shopping and returning to their car appeared to be filmed from a distance. The photographer wasn't visible, but it was clear they were being surveilled. This is footage from 3 weeks ago. And this is from the day we believe the hiking shoes were purchased. The monitor showed footage near the entrance of a large sporting goods store. A man could be seen entering the store alone, but again his face was hidden by a hat and mask. However, Rebecca felt strong déjà vu about that build, way of walking, and clothing. Her heart began pounding violently. The thought, it couldn't be, crossed her mind. When we checked the purchase records, payment was made in cash. However, from employee testimony and this footage, the perpetrator's characteristics have been considerably narrowed down, Detective Johnson continued. The next day, decisive evidence was found. From the tracking chip's serial number, the purchaser was identified. Rebecca was stunned by the name Detective Johnson told her over the phone. Mark Miller. Your brother-in-law. Rebecca gripped the phone, speechless. Mark, who had given Emily the hiking shoes as a gift, could possibly be the perpetrator? I can't believe it. He's my husband's brother and loved Emily so much. Why would he do such a thing? Rebecca's voice was shaking. We don't know the detailed motive yet, but the purchase record contains his real name and credit card information. We're currently getting an arrest warrant and heading to his residence. An hour later, Mark Miller was arrested at his home. During interrogation, he admitted to the charges. However, his motive was something no one had expected. The content Rebecca heard from Detective Johnson shocked her again. After his brother David's death, Mark had developed an abnormal obsession with Rebecca. What started as a sense of mission to protect the family in his brother's place gradually transformed into twisted affection. Mark had secretly monitored Rebecca's actions, trying to understand every aspect of her daily life. Her success at work, Emily's growth, their happy life together as just the two of them. He told himself he was watching over everything in his brother's place. However, when he learned that Rebecca was considering the promotion and starting to walk toward a new life, something broke inside Mark. Fear that his brother's memory would fade and the two would drift away from him drove him to madness. The tracking chip was planted to constantly know their whereabouts. He hadn't expected Emily to get hurt, but the chip's malfunction led to the worst possible outcome. He will undergo psychiatric evaluation. He'll probably need treatment, Detective Johnson explained. He'll definitely be charged with stalking and assault. Rebecca had complicated feelings. Along with hatred toward Mark, she felt betrayed by someone she had shown affection to as her husband's brother. But above all, she was relieved that Emily's safety had been secured. After the case was resolved, Rebecca and Emily returned home. However, their previous sense of security never returned. The betrayal by someone they had trusted left deep wounds in both their hearts. 3 months later, Rebecca and Emily began a new life in a new town. The small town in the suburbs of Portland, Oregon had a completely different atmosphere from Colorado, but it was a place for a fresh start for them both. Rebecca succeeded in transferring to a branch of a marketing company, and Emily quickly adapted to her new school. Mark Miller was diagnosed with severe delusional disorder after psychiatric evaluation and was sentenced to 5 years in prison while receiving treatment at a psychiatric hospital. Visitation requests from him arrived many times, but Rebecca never responded to any of them. Though she couldn't forgive him, she understood that continuing to harbor hatred wouldn't help their healing. "Mommy, let's go hiking again this weekend," Emily said while doing homework in their new living room. "Of course. Shall we try challenging the Cascade Mountains this time?" Rebecca replied with a smile. Emily's foot burns had completely healed, and she could enjoy hiking just as before. However, when purchasing new hiking shoes, they both chose carefully, and Rebecca always checked the contents at the store. At her new workplace, she became close with a colleague named Samantha. This woman in her early 40s was a single mother with 2 children and a precious friend who understood Rebecca's circumstances. "Trusting people is really difficult, isn't it?" Samantha said one lunch break, drinking coffee. "But if we stop trusting altogether, I don't think we can find true happiness," Rebecca quietly replied. "I want Emily to develop the ability to discern the right people rather than learning to distrust everyone." Since the incident, Rebecca had become more cautious about relationships, but at the same time, she came to deeply understand what was truly important. Blood relations and long acquaintances alone couldn't build true trust. She painfully realized that real bonds are created through the accumulation of daily small actions and words. Emily also learned much from this experience. Though only 8 years old, she began to understand that people have various sides. At her new school, she chose friends carefully, but once she trusted someone, she opened her heart to them. "Don't we talk about Uncle Mark anymore?" Emily asked her mother one night. "No, we don't. He was sick. But we need to move forward," Rebecca explained while stroking her daughter's hair. "If Daddy were alive, he would surely have protected us." David's memory was still a support for both of them. However, they believed that building a new life without being too trapped by those memories would be the best tribute to him. On weekend hikes, they began participating in local hiking groups. The people they met there were new friends who knew nothing of their past. Jim and Martha, an elderly couple, Kevin, who had a college-age son, Lisa, a nature photographer. Interactions with people from various backgrounds broadened their world. "Daddy would have loved this scenery too," Emily said, looking out over Oregon's forests. I'm sure he would. And he'd be happy knowing we're living happily in a new place, Rebecca replied, holding her daughter's hand. Letters from Mark arrived about once a month, but Rebecca disposed of them without opening them. While she wished for his recovery, she no longer wanted him involved in their lives. She understood that true healing began with maintaining distance. From spring through summer, Rebecca and Emily thoroughly enjoyed Oregon's beautiful nature. Crater Lake, Mount Hood, Columbia River Gorge, it was a series of new discoveries. And most importantly, their time together felt more precious than ever before. "Mommy, we're strong, aren't we?" Emily suddenly said one day. "Yes, I think we're very strong. But I couldn't have become this strong alone." "It's because you're here with me," Rebecca replied, looking at her daughter. The most important thing they learned from the incident was that true family isn't about blood relations, but about hearts connected through caring for and supporting each other. Rebecca and Emily had overcome their past wounds and were bound by an even deeper bond. Their life in the new land truly became a fresh start in every sense for both of them.